Hi, Johanna. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, Melita. It's an honor to be on your show today.
Now, I'm really excited because we have touched on mindset and the importance of really connecting with your inner self and the role that that can play in your success in business, but in life in general. But we've never really gone deeper into that, and I know that's what you're all about in the quantum heart field business. So I'm looking forward to learning all about that. But before we dig in, I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get your business started in the first place?
Well, I was working in a different business, of course, when I started. So it was actually kind of a rough start. I wanted to do it. I mean, I had to do it. It's not that I wanted to. That was the only thing that I had fun with. But as soon as I started, of course, then the kids always, when I sat down to work on my business, had some emergency, or my husband had something else to do and couldn't watch them. So there were all these things that were kind of like thrown in the way. And then I really discovered that when those things happen and you get distracted a lot, starting your business, it's more your own confidence in it.
Hmm.
Because when you become really confident, those distractions seem to fall away. They honor your inner feelings. So I started working more in that everything is really personal. And if there are blocks in the road, they're personal blocks, even if they're in your business.
Yeah.
And became more to that point of, finding the startup blocks, because it's usually at the very beginning that you feel and that you feel you need to be more confident. And then the next thing I think is when you start out in the business, you don't have much money. So you save on connecting with somebody that helps you with the marketing, which is also a big mistake. Because if you connect with somebody really good like yourself, then things will get much easier, much faster.
Yes, it's that sort of catch-22 situation, isn't it? You don't have the money, so you don't invest in the help and the support that you need, and therefore you don't get the clients and the income to get the help and support. But also that I think it's the same with confidence, isn't it? That, I think a lot of people wait, oh, I'll do this when I have the confidence. But one thing I've learned is that confidence is what you get afterwards. You don't have confidence before you do something for the first time. It's in doing it for the first time and learning you can figure things out and survive that experience. That's when the confidence starts to build. Is that your experience too?
Yeah, it's like that saying that if you need the courage, is having the fear and doing it anyway.
Yes, exactly. There's a great book, isn't there, by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I love that sentiment. It's something that wasn't easy to do at first, but then once you do it and you learn that there are no mistakes really in business. There's just lessons and information to be had. So, and whatever decision you make, as long as it's driven from your values, your purpose, your vision, your way of doing things, then it's always going to take you in the right direction. It's just how long will it take. So it's interesting, isn't it? I think confidence in business, and for women in particular, is just a fascinating area, and there's so many little offshoots of that.
Yeah, and I think as women, we have to work a little bit different because we don't have the wife at home keeping everything free for us to work on our business. So we have to really think about disciplining everybody around us, not just ourselves. For me, I started with just having 2 hours a day. And then there are days when you're really feeling inspired and everything flows. And then there are days when nothing comes, but I still stuck to that time frame.
Yeah.
So I would sit there, do nothing for those 2 hours, or just, sit and write things that were meaningless. And that altogether then eventually gets boring. So some ideas start to come in again, because you can only do nothing for so long.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's not, you mentioned, and I want to mention this as well, that you said that we don't have a wife at home doing things, and that is changing. I mean, there are women who do have a wife at home, and there are also women who have a man at home who is, or a husband at home who is actually looking after the kids, and that's happening quite a lot as well. But I think even in those situations, I think the women typically are still taking on more of the childcare and the chores and the household things at home as well. So there's still some work to do there, but it comes down to, as you're saying, boundaries. I think the boundaries do come from that confidence that and self-love and care as well, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think the boundaries also, or the lack of boundaries, comes from you not feeling that this is really what you should be doing. So somewhere in there, if people around you are really discouraging you, then that is because you're inside discouraging yourself. Because when you stop discouraging yourself, people take you serious.
Yes. So how did you handle that? Did you find a situation where you weren't as confident as you should have been? And if so, at what point was it that you realized or gained that confidence and or turned things around?
I can't really remember when that or if that ever happened. I don't know if I have that confidence now. I just know I can't do anything else. So I might as well do what I'm doing because that's the only option. And I think that being the only option sort of made the confidence kind of a byproduct.
Yeah, I mean that sometimes there's that route, isn't it, where people have a vision, like, yeah, I need to make that vision happen, and sometimes it's more of a, well, why not? Sometimes people have a why, sometimes they have a why not, and sometimes it's kind of like, well, I just couldn't imagine doing anything else, and so I'm a little bit of that stubbornness, and perhaps to just hang in there and keep going.
Well, I've done a lot of other things, but they didn't last very long or work very well, or I ended up not becoming an expert at whatever else I was doing because it didn't fit. So when you find what fits you, I'd say stick with it
How
because,
how did you determine which fitted and which didn't? Because sometimes it's not always so clear, or maybe it was just very obvious for you.
well, it wasn't very obvious. There was a big time when I thought, or many times when I thought I need to be somebody that does a profession that's more acceptable or more in the mainstream. I mean, like now we're becoming more mainstream, but when I started a long time ago, that wasn't the case. And so I wanted something that was more mainstream acceptable and that people would know what it is. So I became like a hypnotherapist and a Reiki master and a thousand things. And I finished all of them to the certification, but they weren't getting me the results that I wanted people to have. So none of these different modalities quite fit my personality and my idea of how to move things forward. And eventually I thought, well, that is because I have to have like my own way of doing things. So it was more like realizing after a long time of getting different certification and education. But that part wasn't wasted because a lot of it is really good and a lot of it fits in with what I'm doing now. And I use bits and pieces of everything. So it's like a
Yeah,
long journey.
I love that, and I think that that kind of is a beautiful illustration of this idea that I mentioned earlier, that there is no wrong decision, because you've gone along the path, but it's taught you what the right path is, and you've learned along that way, and brought a whole load of tools with you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's maybe a detour or two or three, but you learn something on the detour or you see a different scenario. And now I can say for quite a while I took care of people that are dying, friends mostly and family, and I had to stop working to do that, which was not really good for business, a lot of people say. But during those years I learned an awful lot about people, about what's important. And so when I came back at a different level than when I took the time off.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we get what we need to learn. The universe has a way of supplying the challenges and the things we need to do. So there's no shortage on challenges.
No, but they're good. That's what keeps it interesting. It's what keeps us learning and growing and building that confidence. And sometimes it's not clear that that's what's happening until you suddenly you look behind you and see where you've come. You're like, oh, I've got here. This is amazing. And then a whole new world of possibility opens up.
Yeah, and I think right now a big challenge also is social media, because everybody's out there and everybody is so confident looking and so together. Because who wants to present themselves as a loser? Nobody. So we all present ourselves as somebody that is somebody that you'd want to go to for advice, that has mastered this as essentially better than you are, because when you put yourself out as perfect that it's not real. But you
Yes.
don't know about that the other people are not real. They seem real. And sometimes, or what I've seen with clients, is that gives that idea that if my idea is right, or if this is my calling, or if this was what I should do, it should be perfect and I shouldn't need any help. And that's a very dangerous position, because there are others there to help you. There are other professionals there to help you. There are marketing people there to help you. There are people that help you with finances if that's not your thing. You don't have to go it alone. I mean, there's a lot of people around, and there's a lot of really good people around. And I suggest, find the ones that maybe don't have the most perfect Instagram, but that fit you.
Yeah.
Somebody that you really feel is the person that's getting you to the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the importance of, as you're saying, not trying to be someone else, because you won't find those right people to support you on your journey, or those right clients, if you're trying to be someone else, because it's that other persona that's attracting people in, and they can feel, you can always sense when someone's not quite, there's something just not quite coherent with them. You can really feel that. But it can take time to discover who you are.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, the most important person to find when you're out there is somebody that actually listens to you and knows where you're at. Because when you're at the beginning and somebody comes with a marketing plan that's for a big company, it's not going to work for you because you can't see yourself there yet.
Yeah.
So you need to find somebody that can hear where you're at and can start you at that first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that with marketing and messaging, people get in such a tiz and, oh, but my neighbor gave me this amazing strategy that works brilliantly for their multinational company. Like, well, they have a team and an incredible budget that's not going to work for small business. And I think marketing, for example, for small businesses can be so much easier and simpler, but it starts from knowing who you are and knowing who your clients are, and then just making the connections and creating some meaning between you. So that authenticity is so important for every aspect of your business, I believe. But it takes time to find it, but having some professionals to help shine that light, because sometimes you don't see your talents, or you underplay them because they feel so natural to you. You can't imagine that people would actually pay you to do this thing that you find really easy and fun. But in fact, that can often be the right place, but it's not always evident. But as you say, asking for help is a key part, I think, of everybody's journey. And we hear it on the show a lot when guests say that the minute they discovered who they were, they decided to do things their way, they got some help. That's the moment where everything started to change.
Yeah, and you have to trust yourself more than you trust the other person, in essence, because you have to live with yourself. They can have a plan for you, but if that doesn't fit you and your life and where you want to go, then it's not going to work for you, because you also won't do the work the way they want it done. Like you said, with the person that has maybe a neighbor that's really successful doing it one way, it's also very intimidating. It's intimidating out there. So I suggest you get to really look around and find people that you connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, I think that comes back to this confidence that you were saying, if you're not doing your business the way that feels right to you, then you're not going to have that confidence, and that element of doubt is always going to be within you and therefore within your clients as well. So it's kind of, another reason to really, as you say, trust your instincts.
Yeah, and probably all of us. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs that I didn't like along the path of my life, especially early on and in high school and stuff, things that I would never want to do again. So you know who you are and where you want to go and what kind of people you want to work with. And then just trust yourself. I think the biggest thing is trusting yourself.
Mm. On that topic, I would imagine you're probably a very good person to ask, how can we start to trust ourselves? Because over the years, we've always been told, this is the values you work to, this is what you do, this is how you get results. We've always been told within school and our parents and then a workplace what to do, and then you start your own business and then it's kind of up to you. So you have to almost undo everything and relearn and search about who you are. Where can people start with that process?
I think the best way to do is do what you love. If you love what you're doing, then first of all, it doesn't feel like such a chore to do it. I mean, there'll be chore parts coming up anyway. Like I said, there's never a limit on challenges. But if in the core you love what you're doing, then even if there's a lot of challenges, you don't mind getting up and solving them. So I would say the key to that is you love what you're doing. And when you love what you're doing, then that shows in your confidence, and that draws clients to you and people to you because they want not necessarily what you're doing, but they want how you feel
Mhm. Yes.
and how you feel to them.
Yeah, exactly. And if you show up with confidence, then they can't help but be confident in you too. So and confidence doesn't always mean, I think it's sometimes people feel they need to be perfect to be confident. And I don't think confidence is that. I think confidence is knowing that you're not perfect and being okay with that, and knowing, well, I don't have to be perfect. I can still get the results. I can still guide this person to whatever the transformation or the results or whatever it is that they're looking for. So I think, would you agree with that, that
Yeah,
confidence doesn't have a need for the
totally.
perfection?
When I was in art school, my art teacher said when people were, they created their best work, he said, bring in your best work, first day of class. And so everybody brought in something and he said, yeah, well, just throw it out. Because if you've already done your best work, then there's nothing else for you to do. So don't hold on to your little successes and just keep going. And the other thing he said about the perfection that always stuck with me, he said, if you have a belly button, you're not perfect. It means that you had to rely on a community. You had to, so he said, anybody that has a belly button is not perfect. So once you know that, he said, you go from there because there is no perfection.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And actually, I went to art school as well. I did design management, and we had one time when we didn't get to draw so much, but this on this one occasion we did. And we had to draw this shape, and we given instructions, and we made this huge canvas. Well, it wasn't really canvas; it was brown paper. But yeah, I drew this thing. I was so proud, and they were like, "Yeah, is everyone proud? Yeah, we're proud. Great, rip it up." We're like, "What?" But then we had to rip it up and then use the pieces to create something new. And then the idea was that, there's always another way. There's no one way to create the perfect thing. It's, you can express things in different ways, and you can break things up and make something new, and not to be afraid of that. And I think that's always stuck with me as well, that you can have this perfect thing and appreciate it, but then, well, how could that be different? How could it be better? Or maybe it was perfect. But to go and explore and experiment, and to have the courage to do that.
Yeah, and it's perfect maybe in the moment, but the next moment there's room for something else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And if we keep looking back and measuring it on something that we've done in the past, then that's also self-defeating.
Mm. Yeah, 100%.
And
So,
yes, our parents and our peers and everybody tells us, this is what we should do, and but the world is moving so fast.
mm,
We don't know what's going to work in 5 years anymore. So we can't really rely on knowing what's going to happen. So the future is sort of very shaky, and the past's already gone. So all we have is what we do right now. And what we do right now is, I think, really the best way is to set at least 2 hours a day to work on your goal, dream, or whatever. And if you really work on it for 2 hours, that's more than most people do in a day concentrated on anything. 2 hours can be a really long time. And if you really do that for, just start with like a short time, one day at a time, a week, and then a month, and then maybe 3 months, you'll find that the days where you actually get something done are going to be more and more.
yeah.
And, before you know it, you have your business up and running.
Yeah, we even had a lady on this show, Laurie, and she built her business in 20 minutes a day. That's all she had between her full-time career as a lawyer and being a mum and the commute and everything. She just had 20 minutes of focus time, but she used it every day consistently, plus some bonus time when she was traveling in an airplane. But she's built a phenomenal business. So as you say, it doesn't necessarily matter how much time, as long as it's focused time and it's consistent and you use it. um yeah, just go with it and see what you can create.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is on those days when nothing comes up in those 20 minutes that you keep that time and just use it to meditate or whatever works for you. But keep that time as a space where ideas can come in.
Hmm.
So that's really your space time. It's not necessarily your time where you're like super productive and doing three things at the same time, but it's the time where you are allowing things to fall into place and to focus on.
Mm. I think that's one thing that most of us, I know I'm very guilty of this, don't allow enough time for, is just giving yourself space.
Yeah, when I wrote my book, I did the 2 hours a day thing. And there were days when I just sat there for 2 hours and I literally just wrote blah, 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 blah on my computer for 2 hours. And then the next day I would sit there again and I'm like, this is really boring. I'm not going to do it again. So, is there anything else I can write? And then things started coming in again. And then there were, days and weeks where it just flowed easily. But there were also those other days, and they're important too, because they set the time that you're serious, even if it's not working.
Yeah.
And since it can't always be working, it's good to have that discipline to be there even when it's not working.
Yeah. And to accept that that's okay, that you can't, you're not a machine, you're not a robot, you're a human being, and you're not always going to have those moments of whether you get into the flow or those moments of clarity and genius. There are some moments where you're just not in the mood or things just aren't coming together, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
I like your idea of holding that space, even though,
Yeah. I mean, that's really important that you are true to yourself and you allow yourself bad days, off days, good days, great days.
yeah, exactly. And celebrate the great days when you have them.
Yeah, and I mean, even as little as 20 minutes a day, like your client or friend, it's good enough
Yeah.
to start. It's good enough to spend that much time on something that you love and you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm intrigued by the name of your business. So it's Quantum Heartfield. Tell us what that means for you.
Well, obviously comes from quantum physics, which means smallest particle, quantum. And it's based on the idea that we are not solid. Nothing is solid and nothing is the way it's the way it's written in stone or something like that. But even stone is not solid. We are all moving particles. And those particles can shift randomly. They can do gigantic leaps or small shifts. And the heart being our most important center, also the first organ that forms in the human body. And so when we are in that heart field, in that field of unity and love and oneness, things can actually release and shift easier than if we're trying to move stuff around. So quantum heart field is moving small particles while in your heart field.
Mm. So how do you start with that? Because I think, for me, it sounds really nice, but I'm like, well, how would I even begin to find these tiny particles and make them move around as I want them?
Well, you become aware of them. It's like if you study quantum physics or so, you have that nothing is solid unless it's observed, because we don't know. I mean, I don't know what's happening in the next room because I'm not there right now. So for all I know, my chairs and tables could be dancing and I would never know. Or the question, does a tree make sound when it falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it? We don't know. But when we understand that nothing is really the way we perceive it, then we can allow things to move differently. And so mine is more of a spiritual business. Well, it is a spiritual business, not more of. So I believe in the oneness of the universe, and I believe that that oneness or that source energy that is in all of us also has more ability and knowledge of than I have with my brain, which can handle whatever was input at some time. So you trust, and you just let everything go, and you trust. You may have an intent that this is not working for you, but you trust that that part of you that is connected to everything in the universe and that knows everything in the universe and beyond has more knowledge, and so you trust and you surrender.
You make it
And
sound
it
so easy.
it takes less than a second to surrender like that and to come out. And I'd say that I've never really noticed anybody not shifting when they do that. Something
So
always happens.
is it just a case of being still, or is there a process you need to go to kind of build up and build this awareness and trust?
Well, I think any modality is more there for us to give our brain something to do. So we make it a little bit more complicated than it is so that our brain thinks it's actually doing something. But you can, also play with it like a game. If you are sitting here now and you feel one way, and then if you get up later, you feel differently because you're in a different space and you start to become aware that maybe there is something else that's moving me. We spend a lot of time, most of our time we spend either thinking about the past and what we did and what was good, what was bad. And so that's a lot of waste of time because we're not going to change that. And then we think about the future, where we want to be and what we want and all that. But nobody's ever experienced the future they imagined because we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how things are going to flow. So if we stay in the moment and we do whatever comes up in the moment, then we're pretty connected to that present moment field, and we allow things to come into place. I think a really good example is, I think everybody that I have ever met has had ideas of how they make money or how they survive or how they're going to do their life. And then something happened at some point that was even better or worse than they could have ever imagined. But a lot of people have things actually shifted because something better happened. They met a person that they didn't know that helped them. They didn't know the person. They don't even know exactly, if you follow it back, how did you meet the person? Oh, we happened to, be on the same flight, and that was delayed waiting in the lounge at the airport. I had one client that got her dream job that way. She was delayed at the London airport. So when we plan everything, we don't allow for those moments because we don't even notice them, because we're so busy in the past and in the future that we don't see what's right in front of us. But when we know that our life is taken care of, or that life will take care of itself, then we can relax a little bit, and then we can see what's happening right in front of us. And all of a sudden, there are all these connections we make, or somebody will just say, wow, I love your business, let me support you, or something like that. When before you never thought that could actually happen. Or, that one client who never really knew how to pay the rent, but if she didn't have the money for the next month, she'd find it on the street.
Wow.
So things like that can happen, will happen more likely when you're not too busy being occupied with that everything has to come from you. And there we go again with the help. You want to ask for help. You want to ask for help with the things that you don't know how to do in your business. For me, that, would be marketing. So somebody like you is really amazing to work with. And if you are not good with finances, get an accountant. I mean, if you do your taxes and you don't have an accountant and you don't know what to do, you're most likely paying a lot more money than you need to.
Mhm.
We don't need to do everything ourselves, and we can't do everything ourselves. We can't be that perfect person that has the perfect children and the perfect can do the homeschooling and work and has a happy relationship because somehow there's 100 hours in the day where they have time for everything. No, we have to trust that when we leave our kids with the babysitter because we're going to do something else, that the babysitter is going to be nice to them. I mean, do your background check, but most likely after you've done that, you have to trust, because you can't control. And when you're be out of control and allow life to really throw you some wonderful things.
I love that. And yeah, I think it's, you've really thrown up some interesting concepts and ideas that we don't pay enough attention to. As you say, it's in the present moment, and we can miss a lot of things if we're too busy. Obviously, having a business, it makes sense to have some kind of plan and know a little bit about what you're doing. But if you are only focused on the next thing, then you miss that moment, and that perfect moment where we're talking about with the art, that perfect moment, or something that's perfect in just that moment, we can miss it. And I see it with my clients sometimes, that they tell us about, we always start our group coaching calls with, well, what's been going great with you this week, and sharing our wins and what we're excited about. So often someone's, oh, this was great, and then in the same breath they'll go and tell us about the next thing they want to work on, or something that's a challenge. No, enjoy that moment. We don't even give our time sometimes to those moments of recognition of what we are doing and how fantastic we are and how we are making things happen. And that recognition isn't going to help with your confidence either, if you don't kind of see the progress that you're making, and see that you can do what you do, and you do it rather brilliantly. I think I love your idea of just taking that time to let things happen, and appreciate what we have around us, and where we're at any time. Yeah, I'm going to certainly be starting to think more about how do I schedule space for my in my calendar.
And also we tend to, I love that, by the way, with your call and seeing what was great this week, because we tend to focus on what's not working. It's like a tendency, I don't know why we do it or where it comes from, but it's a tendency that we want to be heard about what didn't work, and we want people to feel sorry for us and give us the energy, oh, it wasn't really that bad or so. I had a friend who did that at the dinner table, that every time they sat down to dinner, everybody had to say what was great about the day. And once they've said that, they could also say what was not great about the day, sort of the highs and lows. But they had to start with the highs, because our energy shifts when we are loving what we're doing.
Yeah,
And that's the key to, you being charismatic or happy. It's the
yeah,
key to being happy. And if you can't love what you're doing, look for something else to do. But essentially, you could love everything that you're doing. In Europe, where we have the people collecting the money at the bathrooms. And when I was a kid, I knew this woman and she loved that. She loved her job, which was probably, in my eyes, the worst job you can possibly have. But she loved it because everybody came by and she could smile at them and she could be nice to them and see them walk out not so stressed, and it was a great place. So I'm sure whatever she ended up doing later on in her life, if she could have managed to keep that love for what she was doing, then her life would have been pretty happy.
yeah. I love that. You've just shared so many great nuggets of wisdom and interesting and a different perspective on life and business and happiness. So, but is there any last piece of information or advice you would like to leave people with?
Well, I think we covered it. Love what you're doing, trust yourself, and nobody is perfect. So don't even go there.
Yeah, we all have a belly button.
Yeah.
What a brilliant note to end on. Thank you so much, Johanna, for being a great guest and really sharing a different perspective today. How can people find you if they would like to know more about your work and kind of explore that area for themselves a bit further?
I have a website, quantumheartfield.com, and also a book, The Transformation Promise, because we'll always transform, and that's why it's a promise. So that's where the title came from. And for those people that like, a daily routine or have problem with difficulty, I wrote 28 Days to Love, Joy, and Prosperity. But that's a workbook, and it's like doing exercises. But, all my website has all my contact information on it.
Fantastic. And I'll put them all in the show notes and underneath as well. But if you're out on the road, go to quantumheartfield.com and you'll find all about Johanna and you can reach out to her. Johanna, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on this show. And I really want to encourage people to give you a call, because I think you are a wonderful person to work with. And if anybody needs help with them marketing their blogs or their confidence, I think giving you a call is a great place to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I didn't pay her for that, I promise.
No, she didn't.
Thanks, Johanna.